40 years ago. And I was a student in political science. And actually in 1973, I don't remember it was the 50th anniversary of this university because we had a lot of other things to do at that time. We were occupying buildings. We had the longest occupation of an academic building, maybe still we have, 106 days. We were demonstrating, we were having mass meetings and all that stuff. And I can imagine when you would have been a pollster at that time, you would have come to me and asked me about my political trust. It would have been close to zero. I had no trust at all in politicians, in any authorities, in parliament, in government. That was all bad. However, we were not negative about politics. We thought we might change politics. We were, in some way, we had a lot of trust in ourselves and in the possibility to change society. Nowadays, people think there is very low trust, and if there is, it's very much connected nowadays to the feeling we can't change anything anymore. There's a very strong feeling we are at a very low level of political trust and it's only going down. There are, for many people nowadays, a kind of eternal wisdoms, and we used to write them on tiles in the Netherlands, and we call them tegeltjeswijsheden, and they go like this. Political trust is always in decline, and we are living in a low political trust society. And these tegeltjeswijsheden, if you are not a Dutch-speaking person, please try to remember one word of my talk, and that's tegeltjeswijsheid. This tegeltjeswijsheid seems to be in our heads, of all of us, and also seem to be in the rooms of editorial boards, of journals, in television rooms, and we all think this. And the aphorisms might be true or they might not be true, but they might be very true in their consequences. True in the consequences that if we all think we don't trust, or maybe we think I do trust, but all of the other people don't have any political trust, this will have a very negative consequence for us all. Not only for politicians, that they have smaller room to change things, but also for ourselves. If we all think there is no trust in politics, in politicians, in the political institutions, it will be very difficult to change our common faith. So it's important, I think, to test these aphorisms. Is it true? And now it's not easy to test statements about political trust, because what is it exactly? I will not go into the discussion, but people have very different ideas about what political trust is. When you ask people, they have all kind of ideas. Some people say, well, if they don't trust, politicians are liars. Politicians, they are incompetent. Politicians are morally bad, or they say, well, they might not be bad, but they are incompetent and they are just so talkative. They don't do anything. So they have very different ideas, and there is not a very clear definition of political trust. And some people might say, so don't ask about it. I don't agree. I think we can ask about love, about hate, about fear, and all these terms are difficult to ask about. I will show you four graphics to show something about reality about political trust. This is the first one, and it's a very complex thing. It's about trust in Europe. And on the horizontal axis, you see social trust. Do you trust other people? On the vertical one, political trust. Do you trust parliament? And in the corner, you see the Scandinavian countries and the Netherlands, Switzerland, and a few others, the so-called high trust society. And this is a picture of 2008, 2009, and we are still there on a very high level of social trust, but also on a reasonable level of political trust. Not on a very high level, but reasonable. And it's not necessarily to be something very proud of, because Belarus is also on a very high level. But anyway, the aphorism that we are on a low level is not true. Second picture, the change of trust in parliament. Do you tend to trust the lower house in the Netherlands? High in the 90s, then it goes up. And one of the high points there is 2011. After 9/11, it was high everywhere. In the Western world after the attacks. And then it goes down in the Netherlands. And we all know this story about Fortuyn, the assassination of Fortuyn, the victory of his party during the elections, and then the turbulent times of government. It goes down and down. And then it goes up, and it is very moving, this level of political trust. It goes up when there's a new government, or it goes up when the government shows strength, and it shows decisiveness, and it goes down after a while when the cabinet is in power and there are more problems, and especially during crisis. Third picture, it's again a bit complicated one. You see again the movement of political trust, so it's not something stable in the Netherlands, but it's moving according to what's happening with elections or crisis or whatever. But I also show it, so you can see that political trust is lower than trust in television, in trade unions, in big companies. So political trust is low compared to other institutions, that's true. But so far it's not very frightening. I want to show you one more graph, and that's about the differences in the population. And I think this is one of the most worrying things about political trust in the Netherlands nowadays, that there is such a huge difference between, in this case, the lower educated and the higher educated, but you can describe it in many ways. The political trust of higher educated is about twice the political trust of the lower educated. Okay, so the lies are not, the aphorisms are not true, but we believe in them. And I think it's good to do our kind of measurements to show that political trust is actually not that low as we suppose, and it's not going down. That gives some hope. What I want to show finally to you are a few advices. A few advices. First, an advice to the politicians. When politicians think that political trust is very low, they do all kinds of things to please the voters. They try to be nice, they try not to give bad messages, so they are loved and they want to please. And this is very bad to do, because people will not believe these politicians, and they will become more and more distrustful. So I think that's one of the most important advices to the politicians. Don't try to be trusted. You can try to be trustworthy. You can try to be reliable, you can try to be competent and to perform. But whether you get trust or not is dependent on other things. On the public mood, it's dependent on luck. The second advice is to researchers, like some of you, like me. And that's be very reluctant to give messages like trust is going down and we are in a crisis of trust or whatever. Because these might be self-fulfilling prophecies. If you are repeating this all the time, it might become more and more difficult for people to believe in the possibility of politics. And if you are not doing empirical research, but you are more on the philosophical side of political science, for instance, don't repeat these messages about the crisis of trust because you think that it's well researched, because it's not true. It's changing, but it's not decreasing all the time. And my last advice is to you. I'm really sorry. The last advice is to you, and you saw it already on my last tile, is the first thing is question distrust. If we are talking, we often talk in the way of that we are believing what other people say about politics, but I think we have to question it, and we have to make the questions of distrust smaller. And secondly, try to keep expecting trustworthiness. Don't become cynical, but think still of the normal situation is of having trust and of having trustworthiness politicians. Thank you.